guys, welcome back to Versus. My name is Midnight Strike 3625. Today we're going to be talking about vocalists, namely Joey Belladonna and John Bush, both of whom are known for their tenure in Anthrax. However, I'm not just going to dwell on their tenure in Anthrax. When most people compare these two vocalists, they focus mainly with their time in Anthrax, such as Sound of White Noise versus Among the Living versus Spreading the Disease versus Worship Music. It's just they have more than that. I'm going to be focusing on just their overall vocal abilities and what they have done in their past, just throughout their entire career, more so as vocalists. So, Belladonna had a solo career and John Bush had Armored Saint. So, a lot of you guys don't know who Armored Saint is. Their best album, Symbol of Salvation, showcases John Bush's vocal abilities practically flawlessly. I mean, he had the range. He had, an actual tone back then. I mean, now he sounds really gruff. He sounds really trying to get those brutal vocals, more so like the low, gruff kind of raspy feel to him. And it accomplishes what it's meant for, but he doesn't have the groove. He doesn't have the tone that he used to. And like I said, he probably never will. But then again, neither will Belladonna. So they both sound almost completely different. However, John Bush sounds more similar to his, heyday than Belladonna does. However, they're still both top-notch in my book. So, to begin, Armored Saint formed in 1982 with John Bush, Dave Pritchard, Joey Vera, and Phil Sandoval, and Gonzalez Sandoval, something like that. I don't know his name. I don't know how to pronounce it. That's what I meant. But, yeah, he was on drums. And Dave Pritchard actually died before Armored Saint released their Symbol of Salvation album in 1991, so they actually did a little bit of a tribute to him. I believe Half Drawn Bridge was a solo that had been recorded by Dave Pritchard, but they wanted to include it as an intro to Another Day. So it's kind of an interesting little tidbit of information. That's the last actual Armored Saint album that he plays on. So, rest in peace, Dave Pritchard. So Armored Saint is one of those bands that remained practically undiscovered throughout their entire heyday. So they're a really good, fast-paced heavy metal band. Not quite in the realm of thrash, but, they're getting there a little bit. So a little bit more into the realm of that, like I said, heavy metal, fast-paced rock, and just listen to Armored Saint. Listen to March of the Saint, Raising Fear, and Symbol of Salvation. I actually reviewed Symbol of Salvation, so you can check that one out as well. But anyways, you're good when Metallica comes up to you and asks you if you want to have vocal abilities in Metallica, if you want to be the lead vocalist, the lead frontman. Because back in 1983, James Hetfield was actually unconfident. He actually wasn't confident in his singing voice. So guess what he did? He called up John Bush because they loved his vocal abilities in the Armored Saint EP that actually released in the same year, 1983. So called up John Bush and said, hey, do you want to be the vocalist for Metallica? He said, no, man, I'm I got my own band, Armored Saint. So Metallica just decided, James just decided, okay, fine, I'll just sing. I'll be the vocalist. Kind of like what Dave Mustaine did. They couldn't find a lead vocalist, so he said, fuck it, I'll do the singing, basically. So I don't know how John Bush really feels about that to this day, because his band never really took off, whereas Metallica just soared into the limelight with their first release. So I don't know, but my point being, you have to be a really good vocalist, a really sound vocalist, if Metallica considers you. I mean, I know it probably wasn't as big of a deal back then, but looking back on it, it's like, wow, really opens your eyes. But he really did have a lot of range. He could really hit those high notes, those high screeches, especially in the songs like Madhouse. And no, I'm not talking about the Anthrax Madhouse. Armored Saint actually has a version or a different song called Mad Space House. It's not just one word like Anthrax's version, but it's called Madhouse, and it roughly sounds really similar in the beginning, but then it just takes on its own tone, its own form. Ironically speaking, Armored Saint's version of Madhouse came out first. It's not a cover, it's not the same song, it's a different song, but it's the first full-fledged album that John Bush was featured on, as well as the first full album that Belladonna was featured on, Spreading the Disease, had a song entitled Madhouse as well. So lots of similarities there. It's really interesting to note. So both Joey and John are both known for their like high-pitched kind of screeches and tones, especially back in the day, especially with, Among the Living coming out. Raising Fear had a lot of those higher notes, but John toned it down definitely significantly with Symbol of Salvation. He sings more bluesy, I should say. It's more of a blues-oriented hook with his voice, with his vocals. And Joey Belladonna definitely, calmed it down a little bit with the high notes on the release of Persistence of Time, which was just a year before Armored Saint's Symbol of Salvation. So Joey Belladonna joined Anthrax in 1984, 1985-ish, and his first, official release was the Armed and Dangerous EP, which actually contained a version of him singing Metal Thrashing Mad, which was actually a Neil Turbin song on their Fistful of Metal debut album from the year prior. So I actually personally like the Belladonna version better than the original. It's that good. I mean, of course, it's not, in perfect HD high-def quality, but it's good. It's very good. And it actually has a version of Armed and Dangerous with a little, weird kind of, sci-fi kind of intro. I don't know really how to describe it. It's just, I don't know. It sounds like, one of those old, record players, kind of. It's interesting. But just listen to it if you really want to know more. He actually also does Panic, and there's also another song on there called Raise Hell, which isn't featured on any other album. So Armed and Dangerous EP, really high in the reverb, actually. It's very high in the reverb. So Joey Belladonna used a lot of that back in the day. Now he doesn't really use it as much, but back in 1984, 1985-ish, he stopped using it after spreading the disease. So yeah. In the 90s, Dave Pritchard died. And like I said, Half Drawn Bridge on Symbol of Salvation was used as a tribute, so they didn't really want to continue on without Dave Pritchard on guitars. So after that, they just decided to go their own separate ways, and then John Bush joined Anthrax anyways after they kicked Belladonna to the curb. Too much partying, too much, excesses, stuff like that. Scott Ian basically pulled aside Charlie Benante and Dan Spitz and the rest of the crew and said, look, if you don't kick him out, I'm leaving. So I guess they'd rather have Scott Ian. I don't know. But yeah, he's one of the band's founders. I think it was him and Danny Lilker who actually left after that year that they founded the band. So he used to be on bass. But yeah, as far as just tone goes, they're pretty evenly matched. I mean, John Bush has slightly, raspier vocals, but they can both hit the same notes. At least in their prime, in their heyday, they could. But as far as it goes now, John Bush really can't hit the high notes at all. He focuses more on, the low, gruff, gritty vocals, whereas Belladonna is still trying to hit those high notes, but he does a moderate job at hitting them, but, they're both good in their own way. So, it's 1993, Anthrax has a new vocalist. At this point, John Bush wasn't bald yet. He actually had, really long curly hair, actually. So, it's really weird, because I always envisioned John Bush, just being the buzz cut or bald or, curly hair back in 1999 when he rejoined Armored Saint, actually. They reformed it. But, yeah, like I said, they released a bunch of duds, and this is why people shit on John Bush so much, is because of those two bad albums. They released Sound of White Noise, which was critically acclaimed, and then they released two bad albums, Stomp 442 and Volume 8, The Threat is Real. Yeah, they're shit. Okay, they're awful. But Belladonna really didn't release that much good stuff either. He had a solo career, but it never even took off. You can barely find it. There's not even a Wikipedia article for anything except for Spells of Fear. But that album was actually known for its bad production. His vocals are alright. He reuses some of the reverb on there, but overall it's very lackluster, especially compared to his time with Anthrax. So yeah, We've Come For You All came out in 2003. That was their next one. It was supposed to be their comeback album, but then they actually went into a tour, and that's Anthrax. Then they came back with Worship Music, and Armored Saint released La Raza. So this is their first album since 2000's Revelation for Armored Saint. Actually, they came back in 2000 to release Revelation. So they also had a nod to the old school Greatest Hits CD. I believe it was a Greatest Hits CD in 2001-ish, I believe. But they actually reformed the Symbol of Salvation lineup back in 1999. So that was really cool to see. As far as Anthrax goes, though, they did have one track on Return of the Killer A's, and that was one where John Bush and Joey Belladonna shared lead vocals, so that was really awesome. So, like I said, now John Bush is back in Armored Saint, and Joey Belladonna, since 2010, is back in Anthrax, and I could not be happier with that outcome, because really, when it comes down to it, overall, I feel that the vocalists, both vocalists, are pretty much on par with each other, especially in their prime, especially even now. I mean, I think it's a tie, to be honest. I love both styles of vocals. You can't really compare the style, because they're two very different styles. The only reason why Anthrax decided to go with Bush's more, aggressive, raspy, intense vocals was because it was a changing of the times. It was becoming more of a grungy atmosphere in the music world, in the metal world. So, it only made sense. Bands were evolving. Sometimes in a very negative way, sometimes in a better way. So with Anthrax, it just happened to be, what it was. So overall, like I said, I think they're pretty much on par with each other. I think they're tied. But when it comes to where they belong, I believe that they belong in their respective bands. So like I said, La Raza was an okay album, and it had some really good songs on it. Like I said, I don't know if they're going to make another Symbol of Salvation, though, but Worship Music was pretty kick-ass. I reviewed that as well, so yeah. Overall, like I said, they're tied. What do you guys think? Just comment section, let me know down there, in the comments section. Who do you prefer, John Bush or Joey Belladonna? And I'm talking about just pure vocalists, strictly like vocal style, vocal abilities, not just with their tenure in Anthrax, because too many people give both of these vocalists crap, actually, when it comes to their tenure in Anthrax, and they just solely base it on it, and I'm just, I'm kind of tired of hearing it. So that's kind of why I wanted to do this video, is because they have more than just Anthrax. So yeah, I'm going to leave this off with saying check out Armored Saint. They are amazing, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Versus. This is Midnight Strike 3625. Thank you for watching. Keep calm and rock on.